Good afternoon. My name is Claire Clark and I am from Dynham. We are supporting Highlands and Islands Enterprise to deliver this event today. It's great to have you all with us for this next session in our NEXUS webinar series. A very warm welcome to you all. Before I pass you over to Andrea McCall from HIE, I'd just like to spend a minute explaining how we will run today's webinar. As an audience member, you are automatically muted, but we have a couple of ways for you to get actively involved. You can use your question box at any point throughout the webinar and we will pick up as many as we can during the Q&A. You'll also see an icon called the raised hand icon. And during question time, if you've got a mic and you want us to take you off mute so you can connect directly with our speaker, then just click on that icon and we'll get you connected. And finally, we always want to promote knowledge sharing and collaboration, so we do record every session. We will, of course, share the recording after the event so you can watch again or share with anyone else you think may be interested. That's all from me now. I'll pass you over to Andrea, who will introduce today's speaker. Andrea.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks for the welcome. I just wanted to welcome you all to today's webinar. I'm Andrea McCall and I'm from the Life Sciences team at HI in Inverness. Just to explain a little bit about the NEXUS webinar series, it's an opportunity to find out more about what is going on in our life sciences, health and technology community, and also make new connections. And in case you don't know, NEXUS is our co-working suite on Inverness campus based in Solasta House. And there we have life sciences and technology companies co-locating and collaborating. And NEXUS is funded by the Inverness and Highlands City Region Deal and European funding. So without much further ado, I want to welcome our speaker for today. I am delighted to have Professor George Gunn from SRUC, Scotland's Rural College, with us today. He heads up the epidemiology team in Inverness. And he's also obviously involved in a lot of other projects that are too many to list here. But I'm really looking forward to hearing from him today about some of the local developments on Inverness campus and hopefully also a little bit more about generally what's really going on in the sector. So over to George.
Okay, so I'm just going to describe developments by SRUC on the campus in Inverness. So we're currently in the process of building a new build disclosed by the green circle on the campus. There's a vacant site there that's been held over for a few years now for us to start development. So previously we've had a presence in Inverness dealing with research and consultancy. The research is epidemiology into zoonotic diseases, infectious disease, and the consultancy has been on the line of for veterinary surveillance centres for the farmers, support farmers, and also consultants to provide wider advice to the farming community. What's new is we will be engaged much more in education on the campus, and the building will have the title Rural and Veterinary Innovation Centre, and that's really focused on a wider interest in the veterinary angle, or even the farming angle. We've widened our horizons as indicated by government and by HIE's interests to look much more widely at the support required for the rural communities too, because the big effort now must be to try and sustain rural communities, particularly to the west and to the islands, and with new ways of working, seeing how we can support that better. So the research that's done here has been solution focused, so it's very applied, looking at the livestock sector or zoonotic diseases. That's such as COVID-19. We mean diseases that jump species usually from animals to humans, but sometimes the other way. And also more recently, we've been trying to support problems in aquaculture, try and resolve problems in the fish within aquaculture. And to do all that, we've developed a set of very transferable and up-to-date skills. They're focused on really big data, which we would be fairly leading in, and analysis of such, and looking at time series analysis of such data. And also we've become fairly skilled at using internet and data on the internet. So it's really, we're looking to expand those skill sets that we have that we've developed, really looking at trying to deal with infectious diseases and make them available more widely to different businesses. So this is how the architects, the building has gone out for tender to build. So that'll be agreed soon after the new year, and this build will start. That's how the architects envisage it's going to look. And as I've said before, this is really part of a series of builds on the campus with the idea of innovation, and HIE particularly focused on growing a cluster of activity in human health. And there's other builds to do with that, and animal health, and combinations of both where we look at zoonotic disease. And part of what is envisaged going forward by Scottish Government is how to translate scientific research into commercial opportunities to drive business growth and new investment. So that's what we are trying to achieve here by SRUC investing this money in the campus. This is just a sort of area of what the different areas of work that we anticipate being involved in RAVIC. So we already have the skills, knowledge and expertise conveyed through our consultants to the farming sector and the states, etc. The Veterinary Surveillance Intelligence Unit is a development from Vet Services. We're really, again, using our skills in merging big data sets together and analysing them for the greater good. That's not really just focused on the Highlands and Islands, so this is much wider. That will be across Scotland. We're introducing a programme of different from HNCs, HNDs, BScs, Masters, PhDs. We already do some Masters and PhDs on the campus, but we're really expanding other areas of education to provide education opportunities for youngsters from school right through to people doing postdoc work. As I say, the focus will be on support on rural communities, SMEs, and also trying to find ways of allowing for business innovation on the campus in keeping with other developments on the campus. So the building itself is going to be about 1,600 square meters. We'll have the researchers and the labs inside the building, but uniquely we'll also have in the same building incubator units for startups and bioscience. We'll have large shared co-location areas for people to really share ideas and develop. The atrium's a communal meeting area, and there'll also be lecture theatres, which are not very, and smaller workshop areas, but there's not too many of those on the campus, so we're pleased to be able to have one. This was just to give you an idea. I'm not planning to speak for too long, just an idea of the two stories and how it's laid out. This is a layout of the work within the epidemiology research unit. That's a shared working area. This will be mirrored elsewhere in the building. And as I've said, there'll be labs for teaching primarily, but they'll also do some research looking at pathogen biology and genomics and molecular biology. So these complement work going on in Inverness College and elsewhere in the University of Highlands Islands. So we're discussing how we can co-work on that. But the real work that we do is continuation of what we've been doing already. We've spent a lot of time at UK level looking at VTech E. coli and tried to minimise or find ways of minimising the problems with that in the human population. We'll also be investigating new and emerging parasitic pathogens. To do that, we'll be looking more at the molecular biology and genetics of these different agents. And we'll also be spending a lot more time looking at disease vectors, which you've all heard are increasingly moving their ranges north and reach the UK and the north of Scotland even. And predominantly our focus will be on zoonotic and emerging diseases. I've mentioned already the VTECs, arthropod, the insect-borne diseases, and other things like fluke and schistosomiasis that are now present in the UK. Just to give an idea of how the building will look inside, there's a lot of focus being put on shared spaces for sharing ideas and developing work. And so that's what we'll have within the building, plenty of space for sitting and chatting and having coffees, etc. And as I said, we'll also have a lecture theatre that can be split up into smaller working units, workshop areas. Just an idea, I can't give an idea of what we do in total in such a short presentation. But what we tend to do is, from government funded work, we try to inform feedback and disease patterns to the pig industry, say. And we already have been able to demonstrate that through primarily the input from the team in Inverness, we've been able to cut the emissions of greenhouse gases by about 40%, the industry reckon, just by optimizing production and cutting out disease in very complex pathways. But anyway, the involvement of the epidemiology team across all the big pig farms has managed to improve animal health and welfare and minimize climate impact. So we try to repeat that process to a degree with the Scottish fish industry, and also try and support all the other livestock areas prevalent in the area. But it won't again be focused purely on the Highlands and Islands, although it's based here. When we've established these pathways, we'll try and expand it to all the rural areas and try and do this sort of new way of working across. So we'll provide a platform for disease control and measuring effectiveness for disease or preventing disease. And we'll also put a lot more effort into generating data for food safety and public health. The slides just get more and more complex. The point of this one I don't want to go into, but it's just coming back to the skill sets that we have in epidemiology, analysing data and disease data and data science, and integrating them with new emerging technologies to optimise general health of both animals and humans. And the why are we doing this at this stage is really, as you can all see, the challenges have never really been greater. We seem to, these graphs to the right, I know they're too much detail, but they look at increase in scale of the population, water use, fertilizer consumption, motor vehicles, telephones, tourism, rivers, dams, atmospheric CO2, etc. So we just are all aware that we're living in very turbulent times. There's a lot of challenges. These seem to be impacting a lot on more rural communities, changing the environment and production conditions. And so everything's becoming rather unpredictable. So we expect an increase in production endemic disease, transboundary and emergent diseases. That's the ones I mean that are coming up north from Africa via mosquitoes and vectors, traveling north because it's warmer, and looking at zoonotic foodborne diseases that we're able to keep tabs on. So an increase may set that against market instability. So we're going to require effective solutions will require continuous and up-to-date information. And of course, if the government moves further away from funding the applied research, then that will require then private investment, SMEs developing as they are already in the campus, with a need for the expertise that our team can provide. So we hope that we can pool things together and make a positive impact for this region. Okay, so that might be a little bit shorter than expected. I've gone a bit fast, but I hope that's okay.
That's perfect. Thanks so much, George. I'm just going to bring Andrea up with you, and we'll move over to Q&A. So if anyone has got any questions, just use your question box and we'll get those submitted. Andrea, have you got any questions?
Yes, I just wanted to pick up on something you said, George. Thank you very much for that great overview, and I'm sure we'll get some questions, maybe asking a few more details. But one of the things you said was around supporting the pig producers, you know, to optimize the way they were running their businesses. So that's really, really interesting. And I guess what I'm interested in is, if you've got any other examples of businesses or projects that you and your team have supported with your expertise and your skills, and what benefits that has brought to the business or the project.
Well, right now we have spent a lot of time working with the various veterinary businesses, and so if you look at each veterinary practice as a veterinary business, we've been working with them to help them develop programs of work. So the BVD eradication program for pestivirus and among cattle, which I suppose has got some similarities to some human diseases, but there's no crossover. But we have helped the industry across Scotland and elsewhere, based on work in Inverness, to eliminate that particular virus from many herds. So we're down to maybe a situation where at least somewhere like 40% of Scottish herds would have had this virus. We're down to now just less than 10% anyway, and the ones that have it it's being removed steadily. So we've been able to make a big impact there. Of course, nobody's done the government have made the arguments that the investment that they put into that program has again helped minimize greenhouse gas production, because it improves animal welfare greatly. It improves production. There's fewer animals, they're healthier animals, and they're happier animals. So we've across the piece we've done a similar thing for the cattle sector, and yeah, so there would be for the vet businesses we've helped with continual education and so on. So we've helped CPD there, and yeah, so generally across the piece we look at where there's a particular problem and see how we can help, and we've applied those sort of wider skills, just collating data, collating information, carrying out projects that helped optimize schemes to eradicate disease. I hope that's what you mean.
Yes, no, definitely. Thank you very much. It's always good to get an example of what you do, I guess, because people might not be able to picture it. So that's great. Thank you. Claire, I don't know if you've got any questions in yet.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for that, George. We've got a question from Kate, but she has a mic and would like to speak to you directly. So let me take Kate off mute and see if we can get...
Got to find my question, which I'd written down. There we go. Yeah, that was a great overview and really interesting to hear. Thanks very much for that. I wasn't aware of it at all, so that's the first I've heard about it. So that was really interesting to hear. And I'm very interested to hear about what strategic plans you have already in mind about how to make anything that you produce an attractive proposition for investors in the future, because when I see startups in their journey, that is one of the most difficult steps. So what assets are you going to develop as you go through the solutions to particular problems that you identify, to back up the argument that you might put to potential investors to attract that necessary investment? Now I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, Kate, so thank you for the question. I think it's complex. I think the answer to this would involve both Andrea's organisation and ourselves. So we would certainly, we've developed a product that's not quite on the market, but almost, from a small startup company called ID Maps, that involves human health and veterinary expertise more widely, not just in the UK, but also from Europe. So we've gone through a very difficult process, I have to say, for researchers. Several of us have been involved in that for a few years to try and establish just how you translate science and a good idea into something that a business can market. So that's proven very interesting, but having gone through that process now a couple of times, the team have a fair idea, but it's really how we would, first of all, look at the ideas, and there's a process that's advertised at the beginning of this talk from HIE, the development agencies, as to how to engage in the process and go through, I guess, a process that's been developed to allow people to develop their ideas and see if people can invest in them, and also to see where existing expertise can be brought to bear through training or advice or consulting or whatever, free of charge in this case for the start, to try and see if these businesses can get off the ground and fly. But I have to say, what I've learned is this is a fairly slow and process. However, much impact you feel you can bring to bear on the problem, the whole process developing these businesses so they can stand alone is quite slow. But anyway, we've been involved in all parts of that, and with the expertise provided by NEXUS, I'm sure everyone can pool together. Not everyone will succeed, but I think it optimizes the chances that have, I think, until now not been that widely accessible in this area of Scotland. And indeed, across Scotland, it's more central belt activity apart from HI here. I hope that's correct, Andrea. You need to support me a little bit with this question, I think.
Yes, no, you're saying the right thing, I think, because it's a partnership between us. So if you would be working with a business, with your expertise supporting the business and supporting a product development or something, we are always there as well to support with the expertise we have and the types of support that we have on offer. So maybe a good point now is to mention that we're actually thinking about working together, both HI and SRUC, and we're going to actually theme a future Pathfinder cohort. Pathfinder is our accelerator program that is funded through the Inverness City Region deal, to kind of, offer it specifically to companies in the animal health and aquaculture sector to support them with whatever they might need to develop a new product or service or start up a business. And we're delighted that SRUC are coming to join us actually, I suppose, on the Pathfinder cohort to support with their expertise, with their knowledge, with their connections, to give a little bit more of a rounded package of support, I think. So look out if you're interested in that. That will come on stream from March. So we're looking forward to that, and we're hoping we'll engage with actually a few companies or people we've not met before, who've maybe got ideas who we can support. So that would be from our point of view. And obviously, again, HI is always there to support any inward investment into the region as well. So if there were companies from elsewhere in the country or overseas who would be looking at Inverness as an attractive location because SRUC are based here, because there is expertise, because there is, the infrastructure here, then we can support that too.
Great. Well, that sounds like an exciting addition to the Pathfinder project. That's great. Watch out for March then. Okay, next question from Karen. Great overview of SRUC work and exciting developments ahead. If there are companies who want to find out more or get in contact with SRUC about ideas or projects, how best should they do that?
Well, at this stage, I guess the easiest thing is to contact me. We're shortly going to put in place a team to deal with inquiries, but at this stage, I think it's easiest just to either come to Andrea or come to me, and we'll try and make sure some parts of the team take care of your inquiries.
Perfect. And what I'll do is we do a follow-up email after post-webinar with the recording, so I'll make sure that I include both your contact details in there if anyone wants to get in touch. Okay, next question is from Iona. She is saying, thinking about net zero, have you got an example of how the use of data can help to improve the carbon footprint of farming?
Yeah, well, the obvious example is the one I alluded to at the beginning, where the data on the number of the number of infections in pigs, where we've done that is what we've done is we've gathered information for each farm and then put those together and made a comparison for the farmers. So the farmers, and this will be true, we're doing a similar thing for cattle farms, where you take their data and their level of disease and show them that other farmers are doing better and why they're doing better. And then that sort of peer pressure to show that others can do better and eliminate disease often, that's really powerful. So we've managed to make big inroads through the pig sector, especially, and to be fair to the pig sector, they're very open to these sort of sharing their data and making these sort of moves. In Scotland, the cattle sector, they've made huge inroads to the disease I was talking about, BVD, and that's supported by government, but it's the same approach. It was started by us in the Highlands and Islands, but it's now Scottish level, and it's been copied elsewhere in Ireland and Wales, and I believe England is coming up. So using those comparisons, using the data, allows people to sort of get a better understanding of where they fit within the world and how they're doing, and also realize that often, obviously for the majority, some change can be made positively, and that's been adopted, and yeah, it's been hugely impactful. So we're very proud of that. We're now working with the fish sector to do the similar sort of thing and see if there's ways of working that can minimize problems that they have.
Perfect. That sounds great. Thanks, George.
I should say it's not, if I can just say, it's not just, we've not just been working on animal disease. Of late we've spent a lot of time trying to work towards Lyme disease control to stop people in rural environments picking up ticks, and if they do, how to stop themselves getting Lyme. But that's been commercialized, and you'll hear, if you're paying attention to the media, I'm sure you'll hear more about that going forward. We've also spent a lot of time looking across VTech E. coli and trying to find ways of minimizing the risk to humans there as well. So we've been working, and this is for the last 30 years, and a lot of what you see has actually been done in Inverness. Admittedly, we've kept a low profile, but a lot of these different initiatives have started here. Hence, SRUC being willing to invest with European money and other funds to develop this building. And while I'm on net zero, we should also say this would be the first educational building I know of that's going to be very eco. There's a huge amount of money being invested in this to make it an eco building as well, passive and minimal heating and minimal energy usage. So I should have said that when I was speaking. I was going too quickly, I'm sorry. I hope that's a kind of full answer, but yes, a lot of what we're doing is aimed at net zero and also improving animal and human welfare and minimizing disease. That's the whole thrust of epidemiology, really.
That's great, George. It sounds very busy. We've actually, within this series of webinars, we had one of them about the new Lyme app, and it was really interesting and had lots of audience engagement. So if anyone's not seen that, you can actually find it on our NEXUS page in our post webinar recordings. You can access all the webinars that we've hosted. And it was a really, really great webinar. So yeah, just following up on the Lyme app webinar as well. So okay, next question is from Douglas. What do you think are the biggest trends in the animal health sector in the next 5 years? What will change for the farmers?
Well, I think going in the Highlands and Islands, where it's not ideal for growing crops, there's still going to be animals. And I think from looking at what came out of COP26, quite rightly, the focus wasn't really on animal production. It was on much bigger issues to do with use of fossil fuels and minimizing those worldwide. Obviously, it's a high level ambition. I think within that, there was a lot of talk about minimizing methane emissions. And a relatively low-hanging fruit there is to ask people who rear ruminants, cattle, sheep, deer, whatever, that they produce greenhouse gases. The thing about those is that methane actually has a very short half-life, and if you pull that down by optimizing production, minimizing the number of animals, etc., you can easily reduce methane in the short term, while then in the bigger picture you can focus on more serious issues like nitrous oxide, which is to do with growing crops, etc. So I think what will happen, I'm almost certain is going to happen, speaking to farming leaders, is that now Scottish farmers will focus very much on minimizing methane. in the way that Scottish pig farmers have already made a lot of inroads into minimising their impact on the environment. So I think Scottish farmers, I have to say, by and large, are very positive and cutting edge in trying to optimise production and minimise any damaging environmental effects by and large. So we're not lucky we're inhabit a country where farmers do take this seriously by and large. So I think going forward, I think there will be a lot of efforts made to gear us up for a future, because in Scotland, it's also got to be said, there's not much, you can't grow crops as readily across much of the country as we can, as they can elsewhere, say south of the border or in other countries. So there will be a focus always on producing livestock production. But I think this country will make big inroads into trying to minimise the impact, but accepting that there will always, you can't do much else with a lot of the hillsides and wild terrain apart from have sheep and cattle, deer, etc. there. So I think the country will change. I think it's already changing. They're well aware this impactful conference took place in Scotland. We were very much in the news. Scotland was, Glasgow was. And I think with that goes, the farmers feel it's incumbent on them to respond to that. So I think that's what will happen. I think we won't see huge expansions in livestock farming. Unfortunately, we can't do huge expansions into crops either. So I think it'll be finding a new balance. So I hope that's a kind of high-level answer. I think it was Douglas who asked, but I hope that satisfies.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, George. And a follow-up question from Douglas as well. What about the trends, the future trends in aquaculture?
I'm not so sure what to say about aquaculture. Again, there's the aquaculture sector have been willing to share quite a lot of data. The areas in Europe that specialise in aquaculture are clearly Scotland, to a lesser extent Ireland, and particularly Norway. So other countries such as, say, Denmark do quite a lot with trout, but not salmon. So when I talk about aquaculture, I'm talking salmon there. And obviously there's an expanding market for farming, shellfish, etc. So I'm not so sure how things are going, but I am very aware the industry are responding to pressure to try and make it as safe in the environment as possible. So for the environment as possible, by and large. So I think generally they're pooling together to deal with various issues. And again, it's the fact they're willing to work together that's encouraging there.
Great, thank you. Okay, we've got a couple more questions, so I'll move to a question from Gillian now. She is asking, what are the opportunities in the animal health and aquaculture sectors? What should they be doing more of?
With regard to, I'm sorry, I don't quite. What should you be doing more of in terms of minimising disease?
Yeah, so what about the opportunities in the animal health and aquaculture sectors? What should they be doing more of?
Well, I think obviously someone like me is going to say that what they should do is gather good information, and having done that, use it carefully. I think what's been happening so far is a lot of people have been gathering information in various ways with sometimes often fairly old technology. Now there's a lot of new technology, good ways of doing things, gathering information. And once you've done it, there's a tendency just to store it and not do anything with it. So where you're gathering things, I think they can be put together and used in the way I've described for the pig and cattle sectors with regard to disease, or even the human side with things like VTech, where we gather information and make good use of it to advise how to proceed. I think everyone is aware of that. So it's hard to, perhaps smaller enterprises aren't too motivated by that, but any large enterprise is aware now of the need to do this, and that in a way we're trying to provide a a locus to help that, to speed that process up. Instead of us focusing on mostly government or EC previously projects to do the same, we're now going to try and offer the skill set to help others do that. So any one of these businesses could join in and try and develop better computing, better data analysis, find out who can do the much more technical analysis that they can't do, and make use of the results to again optimize things. I mean, I think fundamentally I can see that what I should have said, I was talking about optimization. We can't make things perfect, but we can make things better. So that's the general drive here. And I think there's opportunities for companies to be set up to help do that.
Great, thanks, George. Okay, final question in from Keith, and I think a very good one to end on. Can you give an example of an unusual project or business that you have been involved in?
An unusual project or business? The most unusual one or complex one I've been involved is leading this one on Lyme disease, but I suppose you've highlighted there's already a webinar that people can get informed better about that.
That's okay. You can tell us your experience of that and how you found it.
Well, okay. Well, the reason I seize that one is I lead it. I didn't want to, but I was told it's funded by the European Space Agency, and they told everyone I was going to lead it if they were going to fund it. They funded it with a lot of money, and everyone says, well, why are you talking about Lyme disease and the European Space Agency? And they came to us, and what they wanted was invest their money in trying to use space asset data. So they referred to all these different size of vehicles traveling around the planet as space assets. And a lot of them have cameras, and a lot of them, I mean, when you hear that these satellites, cameras on them can read the newspaper over your shoulder, they can. That's not made up. It's astonishing what can be done, but very little is being done with that data. And they could see that we could, when we want to see Lyme disease is carried by ticks, and the distribution of ticks is a function of what the habitat's like where the ticks can live. So they like particular habitats with particular temperatures, with particular moisture levels, and ground cover plants of a particular type. So you can actually, with modern technology, map out where ticks will be. And then the bit that's missing is we don't know where. Not all ticks carry Lyme. In fact, most don't. But they tend to be clustered in areas, and we can, if we use citizen science, try and locate. There's the GPs, when they treat Lyme disease, nobody can say where a tick bit them in terms of where they were when they picked up the tick. But people do tend to know that information, so we're trying to provide a very complex system where we're using space asset information that's gathered through a company in Oxford that's part of Oxford University. We have experts in maps who are based in Belgium, a company called Avia, who work in Belgium, and they are specialised in animal disease vectors, mosquitoes and midges, etc. So they are expert in mapping. And then we have NHS and companies associated with them who obviously have the expertise in advising how to control the diseases. And the bit that's missing in the middle is the modelling of huge data sets together. The space data, taking the maps and putting the new information coming from the apps and other sources of information about Lyme together into something that everyone can access through a phone app or through a website. So that's by far the most complex and very difficult project to set up, and that's the one I alluded to earlier. But the complexities of that, but they are huge, but what they do epitomize is what I'm saying. The computing power was never there before to do this. And this has taken somewhere 8 to 10 years to develop. So the amount of time and investment is just by enthusiastic people who realize that the technology is evolving so fast that we can do this and achieve it. So we can put models together that you get the results on your phone on an app. For not a huge, I mean, there'd be €1 million involved. but it's not a huge investment for the complexity of what's being achieved. That's a very full answer now and using up a lot of time, but that's the most unusual project I've been involved in.
No, that's great, George. Sounds like a huge project, and it's amazing how far the technology's come, that we now have an app, and you must be delighted that you were part of it, even though you weren't so keen on it in the beginning. You must be so proud that you were part of that project.
Yeah, we're very pleased that we're just about there with that one.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us and for answering all the questions. I'm just going to pass back to Andrea now, who'll say the last few words.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, and thanks, George. That was really, really interesting, and you've, given us some great examples of what's possible already, and yeah, hopefully what's possible in the future as well. So looking forward to finding out more, and hopefully we'll have a lot of activity on campus and around about it, associated with your building and with your team and beyond that. So I just wanted to highlight a couple more things to our audience. So our next webinar will take place at the end of January on the 26th. And we're delighted to have Dr. Helen Airwood joining us that day. She's going to tell us all about the art of regulating and medicines and devices post-Brexit. So again, a very interesting topic, and there's a lot going on in that space, obviously. So looking forward to having her join us then. If you want to book a place, please go to the High website under events and you'll find the link there. And the other thing is the Pathfinder Accelerator program that I mentioned earlier. So there's actually at the moment, we're recruiting for 2 cohorts. We're recruiting for a general cohort around life sciences and technology. So any business, startup or entrepreneur is welcome to apply to that. And the application deadline is actually next week on the 14th. But then the cohort that I mentioned earlier that's specifically designed around animal health and aquaculture is starting in March, and we're hoping to invite applications by the 18th of February. You can find out more on our website again, high.co.uk/pathfinder. And please don't hesitate to get in touch and book yourself a one-to-one call with one of our Pathfinder coaches who can explain more about the format and the content, and also just go through your business and your specific project, and give you a little bit of initial support and see if Pathfinder maybe is the right fit for you to move the project forward. So that's me really, and I'm just looking forward to your feedback on this webinar, and I'm hoping to see you for our next webinar at the end of January. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrea. On behalf of Highlands and Islands Enterprise, thank you very much for a great session today, George. And a final big thank you to everyone that came in to join the webinar and all your questions. As Andrea mentioned, our post-event survey will pop up straight after this session. So if you can spare a couple of minutes, it would be great if you could complete that for us. Thank you very much for your time and have a great day.